As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The thought of driving through the night had always unsettled me, and now, as darkness began to cloak the world outside, my unease intensified. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 9 p.m. I had a long journey ahead of me, and the remote, winding road that lay ahead seemed to stretch into an endless abyss. The hum of the engine and the soft glow of the dashboard lights were the only companions in my car as I embarked on my journey. The radio crackled with static, and I turned it off, preferring the silence to the eerie white noise that seemed to fill the air. The only sound now was the rhythmic beat of my own heart, a steady reminder of my solitude. The road was surrounded by dense forest on both sides, the tall trees looming like sentinels in the darkness. Their twisted branches formed eerie shapes against the night sky, and I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of isolation. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as I tried to focus on the road ahead, the only source of familiarity in this unfamiliar and unsettling terrain. As I continued driving, a heavy fog began to roll in, creeping over the road like a spectral veil. It wrapped around my car, reducing visibility to mere meters. I flicked on the high beams, hoping to cut through the dense mist, but it seemed to only make matters worse, casting an eerie glow that distorted my surroundings. Unease gnawed at me as I strained to see what lay ahead. Shadows seemed to dance just beyond the edges of my vision, and every rustle of leaves sent my heart racing. The fog seemed to play tricks on my mind, distorting shapes and distorting reality. It was as if the very world around me was conspiring to make me doubt my senses. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the edge of the road. A hitchhiker, their thumb extended in a desperate plea for a ride. My heart lurched, torn between an impulse to help and a gut feeling that screamed danger. The fog obscured their features, making it impossible to gauge their intentions. Every fiber of my being told me to keep driving, to ignore the figure and press on. But a nagging sense of guilt gnawed at me. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and rolled down the window. "Need a lift?" I called out, my voice wavering slightly. The figure remained silent for a moment, and a chill ran down my spine. Then, in a voice that sent shivers down my spine, they replied, "Yes, please." Without thinking, I unlocked the passenger door, and the figure climbed in. As they settled into the seat beside me, I stole a glance, my heart skipping a beat. Their face was hidden beneath a hood, shadows concealing their features. An uneasy silence hung in the air, broken only by the rhythmic patter of raindrops on the windshield. "Where are you headed?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Anywhere away from here," came the cryptic reply. As I navigated the road, the tension in the car was palpable. The figure seemed to radiate an aura of unease, and a sense of dread settled over me. The fog showed no signs of lifting, and the world outside had become an indistinguishable blur of shadows and mist. It felt as though we were driving through a nightmare, a twisted realm where reality had warped and twisted into something sinister. Minutes turned into hours, the passing time marked only by the occasional flicker of the dashboard clock. The figure remained silent, lost in their own thoughts, and I dared not break the silence. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and doubt, each mile pushing me deeper into an abyss of uncertainty. Then, without warning, the engine sputtered and coughed, and the headlights flickered and died, plunging us into total darkness. My heart raced as panic seized me, my fingers fumbling to restart the engine. With a final gasp, the car roared back to life, and the headlights blazed to life once more. I let out a shaky breath, my pulse gradually slowing as a wave of relief washed over me. "Weird," I muttered, more to myself than to the mysterious passenger beside me. Must have been a glitch or something. But as I glanced to my side, a sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. The figure was gone. I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding in my chest. The car screeched to a halt, tires tires skidding on the wet pavement. I scanned the area around me, the fog now thicker than ever, obscuring my vision completely. There was no sign of the hitchhiker, no trace that they had ever been there. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I realized the gravity of the situation. I was alone, stranded in the heart of the night, in a place that seemed to defy all reason. The fog seemed to close in around me, a suffocating embrace that sent a chill down my spine. My mind raced, my thoughts a jumble of fear and confusion. I had to get out of there, had to find my way back to civilization. With trembling hands,